It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague Nick Harper is joining me from Washington, D.C. Nick, good to see you.
Morning, Tanvi. It's 9 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. The US's top diplomat heads to the Middle East for more talks over the Israel-Hamas conflict, and Russia and Ukraine agree to their largest prisoner swap to date. But first, the headlines.
Iran vows revenge for Wednesday's bombings after 2 deadly explosions rocked the country and claimed over 80 lives.
I warn the Zionist regime, don't doubt it. You will pay the price for this crime. These crimes that you have committed, you will deeply regret.
A U.S. court releases documents linking high-profile personalities to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Michael Jackson, Prince Andrew among those named. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, along with Foreign Minister of Nepal, co-chair the 7th India-Nepal Joint Commission meet in Kathmandu. 2 agreements and 1 MOU signed. And Britain's Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says he's planning to hold a national election in the second half of this year. First news from West Asia. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi vowed revenge for the twin explosions that killed over 80 people on Wednesday to commemorate Commander Qasem Soleimani's death. Wednesday's attack was the bloodiest bombing seen in the country since 1979. Several countries, including Russia and Turkey, condemned the attacks, and the UN Secretary General called for those responsible to be held accountable.
Iran was rocked by 2 explosions on the 3rd of January that marked the 4th anniversary of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani's death. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei has vowed revenge for the bombings. Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi condemned the twin bombings, stating that the perpetrators of this inhumane crime would be caught and punished for the heinous act.
Don't doubt it. You will pay the price for this crime. These crimes that you have committed, you will deeply regret.
The White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said on Wednesday that the U.S. has seen no indication that Israel was behind Iran's twin explosions.
Certainly, our hearts go out to all the innocent victims and their family members who are obviously, their lives are going to be forever changed by this. But we don't have any more detail in terms of how it happened or who might be responsible for it. We have no indication at this time at all that Israel was involved in any way whatsoever.
Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has firmly condemned the attack in Iran. The UN chief has demanded that those responsible must face the consequences.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the attack today on a memorial ceremony in Kerman City in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which reportedly killed more than 100 people and injured many more. The Secretary General calls for those responsible to be held accountable. And the Secretary General expresses his deep condolences to the bereaved families and the people and the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and he wishes the injured a speedy recovery.
Iranian Health Minister Bahram Ainullahi announced the death toll of the Wednesday attack, making it the deadliest attack in the history of this Islamic Republic, which has faced similar incidents in the past from various groups.
India's Ministry of External Affairs expressed solidarity with the victims of these twin bombings in Iran. In a statement posted on social media X, MEA spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said, and I quote him here, "We are shocked and saddened on the terrible bombings in the Kerman city of Iran. At this difficult time, we express our solidarity with the government and people of Iran. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims and with the wounded," unquote. India has got the access to legal documents related to sentences of 8 Indians in the Qatar Dahar global case. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said that the legal team has the order of the Qatar court, which is confidential. The court has given 60 days to appeal to the highest court there.
दिसंबर को वहाँ के जो कोर्ट ऑफ अपील है उन्होंने एक जजमेंट दिया। उसके तत्पश्चात हम लोगों ने एक प्रेस रिलीज निकाली जिसपे हम लोगों ने बताया था आपको कि उनका जो डेथ सेंटेंस है, मृत्युदंड है, उसको हटा के प्रेजेंट सेंटेंसेस कर दिया गया है। जो लीगल टीम है उनके पास वो कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है। वो जो कोर्ट ऑर्डर है वो एक कॉन्फिडेंशियल डॉक्यूमेंट है। 60 दिन का समय है जब इस मसले को अपील किया जाता है कोर्ट ऑफ कैसेशन में, जो कि कतर की सबसे ऊंचा वहाँ का कोर्ट है। तो इस मुद्दे पर हमारे जो लीगल टीम है वो काम कर रही है।
Speaking on the Red Sea situation, the MEA spokesperson has said that it's an evolving situation and Indian Navy ships are patrolling the area.
We had made it very clear that we attach very high importance to freedom of navigation, free movement of commercial shipping. We are looking at the situation. It's an evolving situation, and we are looking at all aspects of it. As you know, we have Indian Navy ships patrolling the area. They're also keeping a watch on Indian ships there. So far, we are not part of any multilateral initiative or project in the area, but we are looking at the unfolding situation very closely.
On to the United States now. The UN Security Council on Wednesday called on the Houthis to halt their attacks on the key shipping route in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Nick, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken set for another Middle East visit.
That's right, Tanvi. More diplomatic efforts again this week for Washington's top diplomat. More on that in a moment. But the United States and other members of the UN Security Council have called on Yemen's Houthis to halt their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. All the details in this report.
Members of the United Nations Security Council called on Yemen's Houthis to halt their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, saying that they threaten regional stability, global freedom of navigation and food supplies. Addressing the Council's first meeting of 2024, a U.S. representative to the United Nations, Chris Lu, said the United States believes that the situation has reached an inflection point.
Today, in light of both the broad support for Council action and continued Houthi attacks, the United States believes that we are at an inflection point. These attacks pose grave implications for maritime security, international shipping, and commerce, and they undermine the fragile humanitarian situation in Yemen, damaging the ability of the international community to deliver assistance to more than 21 million people in need. It is vital that the Council speak, and speak now.
13 nations led by the United States are jointly warning Houthi rebels of unspecified consequences unless they halt attacks on Red Sea shipping vessels. A joint statement was issued by US, Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Italy, UK, New Zealand, Netherlands, Japan, Singapore after the United Nations Security Council meeting on Wednesday. Meanwhile, ocean freight rates are surging after a missile attack. The attacks are already delaying delivery of products. All the major shipping companies have halted the transit through Red Sea. As of Wednesday, hundreds of container ships and other vessels have been rerouted around Africa's southern Cape of Good Hope to avoid the attacks. Yemen-based Houthi militants have been attacking high-value cargo vessels in the Red Sea since November in a show of support for Palestinian Islamist group Hamas fighting Israel in Gaza. It has forced ships to reroute around the southern tip of Africa.
The US military has carried out an airstrike on Iraq's capital Baghdad against a terrorist leader the White House blames for a recent attack against US forces in the country. In response, Iraq deployed additional security forces in Baghdad after an alleged drone strike that killed 4, including a local commander and one of his aides. Iraq has accused the United States of carrying out the attack and threatened to further retaliate. Iraqi security forces were deployed in the area and a security team has reached the site for initial investigation. That's according to 2 security forces. The United States is continuing diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the Israel-Hamas conflict. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will head back to the Middle East this Thursday, including for a stop in Israel. US diplomatic envoy Amos Hochstein is also expected to travel to Israel to work to soothe tensions between warring sides. On Saturday, Blinken will visit Turkey to discuss bilateral and regional issues. In recent days, US President Joe Biden has spoken by phone to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, urging him to allow more humanitarian access to Gaza and to help secure the release of hostages that are still being held by Hamas. Well, more updates on the Israel-Hamas conflict. The chief of the General Staff of the Israeli Army, Herzi Halveli, has visited a military base in the country's north. The Israeli Army on Thursday released a video and photos of the visit, which comes as tensions with Hezbollah simmer following the killing of Hamas deputy leader Sahel al-Aruri earlier this week. Israeli troops have stepped up preparedness for war across all border areas, where they have plans to increase the number of soldiers. On Thursday, both the Israeli army and Hezbollah made statements suggesting they want to avoid risking the further spread of the conflict in the region. Meanwhile, the United States will continue to maintain a significant military presence in the Middle East amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said the U.S. remains focused on defending its national security interests in the region.
The United States remains focused on working with a range of partners to help Israel defend itself, to surge humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, and of course to defend our national security interests in the region. That most certainly includes protecting the free flow of international commerce in the Red Sea. Now, to accomplish these goals, we have established and will continue to maintain a significant force presence in the Middle East.
Moving on now, and in their biggest prisoner swap so far, Ukraine and Russia have announced its first exchange of prisoners of war in nearly 5 months, with more than 200 people freed on each side. Moscow described a complex negotiation involving mediation from the United Arab Emirates. Russia's defense ministry said that 248 military personnel have been handed over by Ukraine. Despite the lack of any dialogue on how to end the 22-month conflict, Kiev and Moscow have held many prisoner swaps since the early months of Russia's invasion in February 2022. Prisoners embraced their loved ones after being reunited following that prisoner swap between the two countries. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says he will convene a meeting between diplomats from the military alliance and officials from Ukraine on the 10th of January. The meeting follows a recent wave of heavy Russian airstrikes against Ukraine. The meeting, taking the format of the NATO-Ukraine Council, will be convened at Kiev's request following missile and drone attacks. A US court late on Wednesday released hundreds of pages of documents containing names of 200 people who had ties with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The document has revealed many high-profile names. It's mentioned accusers as well as others he was associated with, from famous business people to politicians. One of those listed is Britain's Prince Andrew, a brother of King Charles III. DD India's Stuart Smith has more on this report.
His name, Prince Andrew, is mentioned in these documents 67 times and more as just Andrew. And although there's nothing new about the allegations against him, they do, for the first time in black and white legal text, lay out the kinds of accusations we've heard of before. Most of it comes from a woman called Virginia Robertson, who was trafficked to the island by Jeffrey Epstein, his island off the coast of America, and there she said that she was sexually assaulted by Prince Andrew, and that resulted him eventually being stripped of his title, His Royal Highness. That's an allegation he has always denied. But another allegation, again contained for the first time in this document, is the deposition from a woman called Johanna Sjoberg, who was a friend of Epstein. She describes Prince Andrew touching her breast non-consensually in a joking manner at Epstein's Manhattan apartment in 2001. Again, an allegation that that Prince Andrew and Buckingham Palace deny. There are hundreds of pages of documents and between 150 to 200 names expected in total, and many of them have been identified already in the media or have given interviews. But the ones that have been released as part of this latest tranche of documents include former US Presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, as well as musician Michael Jackson and magician David Copperfield. To be clear, these are not people that necessarily knew of Jeffrey Epstein's activities or engaged in them. These are just names that appear in a trove of documents related to a court case. Though there was some information coming out that could be problematic for Bill Clinton, one of the people named, Johanna Sjoberg, said under testimony that she had heard from Jeffrey Epstein that he, quote, likes girls young. No response from Bill Clinton on that one. Where Donald Trump was named, this was in his capacity as a businessman before he became president, with his name mentioned 4 times by Johanna Sjoberg, 2 notable ones mentioning once that they intended to go to his casino in Atlantic City, and also that she was asked whether she had ever given Donald Trump a massage, to which she said she had not.
To the UK now, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced on Thursday plans to hold a national election in the second half of this year. The move comes as Sunak's Conservatives find themselves trailing the main opposition Labour Party in the polls. Sunak, addressing reporters during a visit to central England, expressed his working assumption on a general election later this year, stating, "In the meantime, I have lots I want to get on with."
Yes. So look, my working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year, and in the meantime I've got lots that I want to get on with. But what it does highlight is the damage that these strikes are having, and at this point every other part of the NHS workforce has found a sensible, fair agreement with the government, including nurses, midwives, paramedics, consultant doctors and specialty doctors. It's only the junior doctors who are now on strike.
Britain's Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said that Britain wants to work with Kosovo to develop its economy and bolster its security, as he met with the country's leaders on a visit to Pristina on Thursday. Speaking alongside Kosovo's Foreign Minister, Cameron said Britain should be investing in areas that have been unstable but are now showing great stability and progress. All of that against a backdrop of rising global instability. Cameron also met Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti on Wednesday evening.
As we see in the news today, we live in a world of great insecurity, great instability, a world of great conflict, and it's a time when countries like Britain should be supporting our friends, working closely on our important alliances, and investing in areas that have been unstable but are now showing great signs of stability and progress, and that's why we're here, and that's why I want to continue to work with you. So what we're doing here in Kosovo with you fits into a broader pattern.
Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Tanvi, it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much for joining us, Nick. Nick Harper joining us from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un says peaceful reunification with South Korea is impossible, just as South Korea and US conduct week-long firing drills near the North Korean border. Moscow embraces its coldest weather in 74 years, with temperatures plummeting to minus 27 degrees Celsius, well below the average temperature for early January.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. The 7th meeting of the India-Nepal Joint Commission was held in Kathmandu on Thursday. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Nepalese counterpart NP South co-chaired the meeting. Both sides signed 2 important agreements, the first one being on long-term agreement on electricity, and another one to enhance investment in high-impact community development projects. With the signing of the agreement, the bilateral understanding to export 10,000 megawatts of electricity from Nepal to India in the next 10 years has been materialized. Earlier, Dr. S. Jaishankar met Nepalese President Ramchandra Paudel at his office in Kathmandu, during which the minister conveyed warm greetings of President of India, Draupadi Murmu. To him, he said that India values his guidance and sentiments for a strong and expansive India-Nepal ties. Besides, discussions on bilateral relations and mutual cooperation were also held during this meeting. The External Affairs Minister also called upon Nepalese Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal. Jaishankar conveyed his warm wishes and that of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and recalled Prime Minister Dahal's successful visit to India in June last year, which has imparted a new momentum to Indo-Nepal ties. The two leaders discussed the follow-up, including through the Joint Commission meeting today. Jaishankar said that the friendship between India and Nepal is indeed unique, and the partnership is moving from strength to strength. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday took to social media platform and shared his experience of his visit to the Union Territory of Lakshadweep. In a series of posts on social media platform X, Prime Minister Modi shared his experience of the visit. Prime Minister said that he has had the opportunity to be among the people of Lakshadweep, and he is still in awe of the stunning beauty of these islands and the incredible warmth of its people. He wrote further that he has had the opportunity to interact with the people of Agati, Bangaram and Kavaratti. Prime Minister Modi also thanked the people of these islands for their hospitality. The Indian Prime Minister also shared some glimpses of his experience in Lakshadweep Island. He also tried snorkeling in the islands of Lakshadweep. He shared the pictures of the corals and fish and advised adventure lovers to add this spot to their tourism bucket list. Now, in Japan, thousands of rescuers are in search for survivors of the Monday earthquake that killed at least 84 in Japan. Evacuees continue to wait for further aid amid freezing temperatures and heavy rain. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said that rescue efforts in the quake zone were being hampered by geographical limitations and ongoing aftershocks, but the government is doing its utmost to help those affected. This was stated by Prime Minister of Japan Fumio Kishida.
The situation in the disaster-affected areas remains challenging, but we will continue to take all possible measures to support the victims. We have received messages of sympathy and offers of aid from dozens of countries, regions and private organizations around the world, including from the United States, the other G7 nations, China and Taiwan. We are not accepting any human or material support.
Still with Asia, North Korea has said that it is shaking up its foreign policy and government measures to consider South Korea as a separate enemy state. Experts say North Korea's recent policy changes might lead to the foreign ministry ceasing relations with South Korea and potentially justifying the use of nuclear weapons in future wars. In December 2023, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said at a party meet that peaceful reunification is not possible with South Korea and instructed for decisive policy change in relations with the quote-unquote enemy. He also directed the military to be prepared to pacify and occupy the South in the event of a crisis. Meanwhile, South Korean and US troops held a joint combat firing drills in Poncheon near the border with North Korea to test and enhance combat readiness, simulating enemy aggression. The joint exercise involved heavy weapons and took place over a week starting on December 29th and ending on Thursday. The allies have dramatically increased the scale and intensity of these joint drills in the past year amid escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula, as Pyongyang tested both long-range ballistic missiles and tactical weapons designed to strike targets in the South and the Pacific. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Queen Margaret II of Denmark on Thursday took her royal carriage ride through Copenhagen for the last time as monarch before handing over the throne. The 83-year-old queen, who inherited the throne in the year 1953, will step down on January the 14th, passing the reins to her son, Crown Prince Frederik, who will become King Frederik X. Extreme temperatures swept through Sweden's north on Thursday, while in the south, rescue services evacuated motorists from hundreds of cars stuck overnight due to heavy snowfall, strong winds and icy conditions. Moscow experienced its lowest temperature in 74 years as thermometers plunged to -27 degrees Celsius in some districts on Thursday, with temperatures falling 13 to 15 degrees Celsius below the average. The severe cold weather is expected to remain in Russia's capital until January the 7th. Researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, Georgia, have created the world's first functional semiconductor made from graphene, a single sheet of carbon atoms held together by the strongest bonds known. Semiconductors, which are materials that conduct electricity under specific conditions, are foundational components of these electronic devices we use daily. And on to India now. India is the fastest growing large economy globally. It is among the world's 10 largest automobile markets this calendar year when compared to the pre-pandemic year of 2019. In a rare commendation, the Global Times, a prominent Beijing-based Chinese media outlet, has published an article praising India's significant strides in economic development, social governance and foreign policy under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The article highlights India's remarkable achievements over the past 4 years. The article notably commends India's proactive approach in fostering a Bharat narrative emphasizing the nation's strategic confidence. The article lauds India's foreign policy strategy under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The article notes that India's strategic thinking in foreign policy is clearly moving towards a great power strategy. And today's World Braille Day. The United Nations has designated 4th January as World Braille Day. Braille is essential in the context of education, freedom of expression and opinion, as well as social inclusion. This day marks the birth anniversary of the inventor of Braille, French educator Louis Braille. On the occasion of World Braille Day, trainees from the Blind Relief Association in New Delhi paid their tributes to their inventor, Louis Braille, who invented Braille in 1821. We know it's an essential language for communication for the specially abled children. That's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.